Um, all right, so let's start by defining what is anxiety and why do we have it. So, and just as a reference, just for next 1 hour, I'm going to use the words worry, stress, and anxiety interchangeably. Okay, so as I think most of you know this, but it's good to for ourselves to kind of remind ourselves about these facts that as human beings, stress and anxiety is actually a protective mechanism, right, for us to survive. What happens is when we are faced with either a new situation or an imagined situation, right, we go through something called as stress appraisal in our brains. What that means is we ask ourselves two things. One, how significant is the situation? And two, can I deal with it? And if the answer is no, meaning no, I can't deal with this, that's when our brain and body, goes into like the producing the stress hormones like cortisol in our bloodstream to get us to prepare. It's a preparation mechanism to deal with the situation that we think we can't deal with. So this is what you and I physically start feeling, right? Like the stress and anxiety, like palpitations, maybe increased heart rate, blood pressure, just general restlessness and anxiety. So that's just really why, or what it is. It is just coming from that preparation uh, of the question that can I deal with this. Now, the second most important part about stress or anxiety is it's a physiological phenomenon, meaning it is not just in our brains or mind, it actually lives in our body, right? And this is very important for us to know, since to deal with stress, now we can use our bodies to fight it equally. And I think this is where a lot of times people think, no, 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 I'm worrying, it's just in my brain, the worry's in my brain. No, worry actually lives in your body, like actually physically in your cells. I'm sure you guys have heard of like inflammation in your cells and bodies and all of the, the cholesterol, like all of the stress related disease that come, right? Because it actually lives in our body. And so why are we preparing, right? I mean, all of this preparation to deal with this thing that we think is stress is a way for us to control, because if we can prepare for it, if we can control for it, then we may be able to deal with it. And that is just what it is. Like I say, worrying is basically a false sense of control, where we think, okay, if I can just worry about every situation that can go wrong, and then I can come up with a possible solution in my brain, then when it actually happens, I'll know what to do, and hence I'm in control. Right? So it's a very there's this joke that my teacher said that like a mother sends a telegram to through the son, and the telegram says, "Start worrying, details to follow." Right, so so that's just how it is, right? Like we're looking constantly in our survival and vigilance as just human beings to make sure that like we're just wired for survival, to be honest. Not We are not wired for happiness. So that's just really where it is coming from. And um and like, I mean, it's kind of like it makes sense because like if you remember olden days, right, when like Homo sapiens had just arrived on this planet, and lion is running behind you in a savanna, our body produces the stress so that the blood flows to our limbs, our non-essential systems like digestion shuts down so we can actually fight or flight. And that's like really for us to truly survive when a lion is behind us. But today it feels like there's always a line behind us, when even it's not true, right? I mean, like social media constantly and news channels all the time, like exaggerating, what's happening, and especially like COVID, right? Like every morning I wake up and I asked my boyfriend to look up, okay, what is the number today? How many people died, right? And like, what a way to start our day is by counting the people who have died. So and COVID obviously is exaggerating this problem, but in general, this is what it is, right? Like, we are just constantly preparing for survival, and in that preparation to control and to deal with it, we are basically just inducing the stress response in our bodies physiologically, and then that constant feeling of anxiety that stays all day long, and like 24/7, 365 now. So that's, the that's just really what it is. One thing to point out here is that the important part, especially for human beings, right? Because all animals have stress responses. For human beings, the stress can happen not just with real situations, but with imagined situations. So this is where, when we start asking ourselves, what if, right? What if this happens, and what if that happens, and if my family member gets this and I get it, and this, like, just all of the what if scenarios, which are imaginary. Now our body starts preparing for survival against those imaginary situations, and that's when the vicious cycle of stress and anxiety sets in. So that's just like what it is. And so to me, let's talk about how to deal with it. There are two, like, things that I really find powerful. Obviously, one is a very simple tool, which is I call reminders, right? What are the things that we are forgetting, and how can we just remember them? These are some basic facts that just kind of ground us back to reality. So, number one, right? You and I are not alone, right? Most people around us are feeling it. Like, most of us feel stress, almost all of us feel stress, just different levels and intensities, right? Based on our individual appraisal of, can I deal with the situation or not? But everybody, like, that's just human behavior to feel stress. Number two, because you and I are feeling stress, nothing is wrong with us, right? Personally, like, what you are feeling is how human beings' genetic coding is. Right? It's like my dog, she's genetically coded to go fetch things, right? So if I throw a ball, she'll fetch it. Nothing is wrong with her if she wants to fetch. That's how dogs are coded. So similarly, we are coded for survival, and stress response is one of the genetic, expressions of that. So nothing is wrong with us because we feel stress. And we are not alone, because all human beings around us are feeling the same stress. Number three, these are just about the things that we may forget, which is, like I said, stress can happen for imaginary situations, right? So we are imagining, like, the what if scenarios. Four, obviously, stress and worry is a response to control the situation. And then five, stress lives in our body. So that is very important, because we think if we can just think about solution and we can think out of stress, it doesn't work that way, because stress actually lives in cellularly. So those are just reminders, right? Of, like, again, you and I are not alone. Nothing is wrong with us. It happens for imaginary situations. It is just our survival control response, and it actually lives in our body. So these are just facts and reminders, if we can tell ourselves and remind ourselves, just to ground ourselves. Now, what are the second tool besides reminder, obviously, is behavior change, right? It could be either physical behavior and mental behavior. Now, physical behavior, I know most of you are going to roll eyes when I say, physical behaviors are the standard stuff that you've heard like bazillion times. They're cliched, right? Like, eat healthy, sleep, exercise, meditate, just standard stuff. Nothing, there's no silver bullet, unfortunately, for this body. So I'm not going to harp on why eating and breathing and sleeping and moving are important. But I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about breathing. Like, why breathing and this whole meditation, and why is that so crucial? So because stress lives in our body, we can use our body to fight it. Now, to fight stress, which is a sympathetic nervous system response, we have something called as parasympathetic nervous system. Now, this parasympathetic nervous system, when you activate it, that's when it reduces your heart rate, it reduces like the cortisol in your body. It kind of induces the relaxation mechanism. And how do we activate that nervous system of ours? And because we are physical beings, right, basic sensory physical things, right, like touch, what we see, what we can smell, like aroma, sounds, all of this actually can be used to activate that system. Now, what is the easiest one that you have, which you need no tools for? It's your breath. You always have it, right? So that's why breathing has been used as an exercise to induce relaxation, activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And a very simple way actually is to do a counted breathing, right? So you may, if you Google it, you can look up like 4-7-8 breathing, which is like you inhale for a count of 4, you hold it for the count of 7, and then you exhale for a count of 8. You can do 4-4-4, meaning inhale, hold, exhale. Like it doesn't matter. The count is irrelevant, but basically there is a count that you're kind of set, and then you kind of go about it and stay to it for a couple of minutes. So let's just try that. Maybe we'll do 3 rounds of 4-7-8. And when you're exhaling, you can either exhale through your nose or through your mouth. Both will kind of give you a different sensory feeling. And either is okay, actually, it doesn't matter. So let's just take maybe 1 minute to do. I'll count 4 inhale, 7 hold, 8 exhale. Yeah? Okay. So let's start. Let's start inhaling for count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? How does it feel? Thumbs up. So this is like somebody actually called this as we have a perpetual spa that we carry with us. And I love that metaphor. It's like, oh, any day I want to feel like I'm in a spa, all I need to do is just breathe, slowly. And it kind of feels like close my eyes, maybe imagine I'm in an ocean. The same imagination that is triggering the stress imagination, what if scenarios, can also be used to imagine we are on a beach or, whatever is your favorite location, right? So just close your mind, imagine that beach, and just breathe on a count. And that's it. Like that's the simplest tool we have access to. It doesn't take time and it doesn't take anything else. So that's like the very important that I want to talk about. And then I'll just leave at the fact that, eating, sleeping, and moving, all of these are actually a way for our bodies to do a toxic cleansing, right? So when you sleep, there's a chemical wash that happens in our brains, which detoxifies all the chemicals and, bad hormones and stress hormones that have been built up. So that's what it is. It's a chemical wash that happens every day when we eat, sleep, and exercise. So definitely, prioritize things of that nature, especially when we're staying indoors with the whole COVID situation. And the last is our bodies love routine, right? It's if you've probably heard the word circadian rhythm, right, which like makes us feel sleepy at the same time every day. So our bodies are running on a clock, internal clock. So routines really are helpful. Like, so if we can just make a routine of when we sleep and eat and exercise, just that doesn't matter what you're actually doing, but if you make it a routine, then it itself will be super beneficial. So those are the physical things that you can do to fight the stress. And I'll take 5 more minutes to talk about the mental behaviors. So mental behaviors, the most important one is attention, right? So let's say I tell you, think of a purple tree. Just by a thumbs up, are you thinking of a purple tree? Okay. Now, don't think of an orange elephant. Don't think, right? You know this trick, right? All of you thought of the orange elephant, right? Because our brains don't know how to process no. Like we are like symbolic, like our brain works on like symbols. So whenever we say don't think of COVID or don't think of all the things that's happening wrong in the world, we will think about it because we don't know the no. All we hear is symbols. So the simple neuroscience of how our brains work is where attention goes, energy flows. Right? So whatever we pay attention to, that's where our energy will go. So every morning if we wake up and start reading the news and what's wrong with the world and start looking at how people are being stupid, let's say outside, and people are not sheltering in, like that's where our energy will go. That's where our stress will kick in. But if we also pay attention to what do we have, right? Like we are getting to spend more time, let's say, with family, and I mean, we don't have to deal with the daily commute any morning, whatever we have right now, right? Like, let's say you are healthy right now and your family members are healthy. So, whatever we are paying attention to, where attention goes, energy will flow. So, just keep that in mind when you're thinking, just always think of what am I paying attention to versus what should I not pay attention to because the not will not work. Right? That's number one. Number two, acceptance. Right? So emotions again live in our body and they are just messengers. Like when you feel anger and sadness and whatever joy, they're just messengers of something. They're not right or wrong, they just are. And so the best way that I use for acceptance for emotions is, I just tell myself this is hard and that's okay. It doesn't have to be easy. Right? This is hard and it's okay. So that's number two. And then number three, kindness. Right? Starting with ourselves, because we all are on this let's figure stuff out and let's get better and let's use this time to clean like the whole garage and whatever it is, right? We're ambitious people. Let's start with kindness with ourselves first, right? Especially if you're feeling stress, the best way for the kindness to show up is the phrase I love, which is I hear you, right? I hear you and I am here for you. So I hear you, I'm here for you. And that's the simplest way to show kindness to ourselves. And to remind, right, that you and I are not alone. There is support out there and we'll figure it out. We are very, very creative people. And whatever is here, it's okay for it to be here. If it's hard, it's okay. And we are here for ourselves. Right? So just to kind of recap, those are the three mental behaviors that we can use or focus, I guess, tools. Attention, where an attention goes, energy flows. So always look out for the question of what am I paying attention to? Number two, acceptance. Whatever is arising, it's okay. The emotions are not right and wrong, they just are, they're messengers. So it's okay. If it's hard, that's okay. It doesn't have to be easy. And third, being kind with ourselves first, right? I hear you and I'm here for you. So those are the three mental tools or behaviors I will leave. And then now I want to open up for Q&A for next, let's say, 15-20 minutes. So then we'll just have a conversation on what's top of your mind, and then, hopefully everybody can benefit from it. So feel free, I've unmuted, so feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to speak. Any thoughts and questions that anybody wants to discuss?
I can start.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Deepthi, for hosting this session, and thank you for like always being there for me, I guess. I think the biggest, and like the biggest thing during this time, especially for me, is not knowing when this would end, right? Like not feeling in control, right? I think that was the biggest source of anxiety. And obviously, like what the routine was before, it's not anymore. So I think those were like my biggest challenges, other than like, what if it happens to the family member? What if, like, all the what if scenario, but not feeling in control and when this would end.
Awesome. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Actually, I was listening to Adam Grant recently, and the same question came up, and he had this really good thought process, thinking, if you go back in time in your life, and we all have faced situations where we did not know, like, that thing that was happening in past will ever end.
Yeah.
And it did, right? So if we can maybe remind ourselves of the times that we have gone through personally and as a humanity, right? I mean, Spanish flu happened and plague happened, and they all happened, and they eventually got over, and they were actually a much larger and exponentially larger scale than what COVID is. But we survived as humanity in those times without technology, and even, like all the advancements that we have medically now. So if we just kind of remind ourselves, this has happened both to us as personally and to humanity at large, and it did end, right? So maybe that would be a good reminder, to anchor ourselves, that to know that we may not know the end date, but we know definitively that it will end. So that's just a thought that comes to me on the controlling the, because you're right, our minds, our the infinity only lives in our minds, right? Infinity does not live in physical
Deepthi?
world. Oh, can you hear me? Hello? You guys can hear me? Okay, awesome. So infinity, lives in our mind and not in physical world. So I guess that's what. Sorry, I'm just mute. Yes. Okay. All right. Sorry. So just like keeping in mind that our minds can imagine infinite and go into this vicious cycle, but just again anchoring ourselves to something solid from like past, and then again bringing back to the real world we live in, like that. Just a thought. Yeah. Right.
Hey Deepthi, Sumita, how are
Hey,
you?
I'm good. How are you, Sumita?
Good, thank you so much for this. And this is so helpful, right? Sitting with you, listening to you, and getting this advice. Would you have some tips on how we can help other people in our lives who are going through them and they don't have the benefit of you?
Sure.
Simple ways of kind of just
Yes.
on a everyday basis to help people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, thank you for asking that question. How can, obviously, we are focusing right now in this call on how can we be there for ourselves, but very importantly also, how can we be there for our family members, our loved ones, our neighbors, and community at large, right? So I think there are. So I will focus more on the sort of subtle things, versus, like, obviously charity and donations and all the other ways you can be there for each other, which you guys already know. But I think one thing that I think before, again, I want to just say this again, before we can be there for others, we have to self-care, right? And self-care is not selfish, because I think in Western world there's a very black and white thinking of, if you are taking care of yourself, then you are being selfish and then you're not being selfless. But in Eastern philosophies, there is this concept of, taking care of yourself so you can be there for others. Because imagine if you are sick, how are you going to take care of anybody else? And, in airlines, you probably have seen, when they say if the oxygen goes down, the masks will fall, put yours first, then put on the child. Right? It's the same thing. So self-care is super important. So imagine if you have taken care of yourself, then how can you be there for others? I think the number one thing is just, again, depends on obviously the logistics. We are kind of social distancing, right? So it's all like connection. So virtually being there for others, right? So connect with people, very important. Human beings are social beings. So we need that connection. And I think video kind of is the closest that comes to being physically there for the person. So connect with people, especially for some people, it's hard. Like, again, we have become a very transactional society, right? So we call when we need help, but we don't call just to say, okay, what did you eat for breakfast? And let's talk about like stupid, boring things. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to like cultivate a habit of just connecting for the sake of connecting. There doesn't have to be a purpose besides connection itself. And just, I guess, I would say if we can create a sense of safety in our relationships, and it starts with obviously allowing ourselves to feel vulnerable and sharing with others on how you are feeling. So if you're feeling stressed, allowing yourself the guard down, and obviously the people who you trust, being vulnerable with them so you can connect with them, and allowing hence them, giving them permission to drop their guard and then leaning on you, right? So vulnerability is the only way to connect. And so just being there, right? Not solving. So not like giving tips and tricks and, oh, do this and do that and do that. That's the easy way to connect. The hard way to connect is not solve, just listen. Be there, be vulnerable, share that you're having a hard time and you're not looking for solutions, so that they can also say the same thing to you, that I feel lonely and I'm not looking for solutions. We just want to be heard and seen. And that's kind of a basic human need we have. And for people, who don't have loved ones who live with them physically, like if they're like single and living alone, especially, it is hard. Loneliness is very hard. So again, giving them, maybe calling, if you have friends, for example, or maybe family members who are single and living alone, just call them, connect with them just for the sake of connecting, and start with yourself, be vulnerable, so that you give them permission to be vulnerable. And none of you have to solve anything, right? You're just there to connect and be with each other and hear and listen. So those are the things I think that come to my mind. Hope that helps.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yes.
Hi, Deepti. Megha here. So in my house, especially in these days, there's this crazy scenario of, me and my husband sort of counterbalancing each other in a very weird way. That I'm the one, you were talking about where attention goes, energy flows, and I'm the one who kind of tends to focus more on the COVID news, so to say, and he is the aloof guy. And the constant conflict that we have is that, and that's a generic question also, that if we don't worry about things or don't pay attention to things, how will we creatively find solutions or
Yes.
take precautions, or just be innovative about
Yeah.
those areas which can possibly be potentially problematic. So
Yes.
is it worry sometimes helpful?
Yes, 100%. I mean, if it was not of use, the nature would not have coded it in our DNA, right? I mean, worrying or stress, like I said, is a survival mechanism. Why do human beings have a bias for new things and negative things, right? We pay attention to anything that is different and new, number one. And number two, we remember whatever is wrong or negative with much high intensity and frequency than what is right. all of this is coded in our DNA for the very specific reason these are survival mechanisms. So nothing is wrong with the worry. I think what happens is there is the area of control, right? So like for example, it is super helpful to know why distancing is useful. So we like, so in the beginning I didn't take social distancing seriously. Then I read enough news, and then it really dawned on me why this is important, right? Or I read enough about sanitizing your hands and like all of those things that is in the news, and how we can take that to change our behaviors and basically do things that are in our control. That is useful, super useful. And absolutely you're right, like if we don't learn them, how would we then kind of do it? Then what happens is then we sometimes, more often than not, slip into this vicious cycle of where what if, right? So like once in a while I would have dreams of what if I get it, and then somebody else gets it, and then like how will we deal with it, and like should I start preparing of, oh, I only have one bathroom in my house, and how are we going to so like all of those things, thinking about that, is that really going to solve anything? Like, is that going to give me any new tools or insights into when the situation really happens? How would I actually face the situation? That's, I think, that distinction becomes important, where sometimes up to a certain point, you're right, we look at news, we understand why it is important, and we adapt our behaviors. So that's the good part. And then it's a slippery zone of, because we have the negative bias, we go into this rumination and what if thinking, and then it's this like a downward spiral after that. So that's where I think if you catch yourself in that, then you can just become aware that that's where you are, and then all the things that you're thinking about no longer are in your control. And if they're not in control, worrying about them is just a false sense of control, but it's really a false, right? There's no way you can actually do anything about it. So you're right again that it is a useful behavior to the point we adapt for control, and after that it's the false sense of control that kind of drives us. So we'll just have to check, and that's where getting in touch with your body, because again stress lives in our body. So when you start feeling oh my god, like something isn't feeling right, like I'm feeling tense and my heart is palpitating, my stomach feels funny, just use your body to check in, and then maybe take a break, and then again you can always come back to it, right? So you don't have to not think about forever, but just for this moment, for your benefit, you can take a break. So those are just the two thoughts. Hopefully, I don't know if I answered your question. Okay. Awesome.
Dipti, Claudia here.
Hey.
So I wonder my partner's, I guess, login.
No worries.
But hi, everybody. Good to make your acquaintance. I had a question. How do you deal? I mean, the circumstance is just surreal.
Yes.
We've seen it in the past, but obviously none of us thought we would, in any way or form, be involved in the pandemic. And the way it has all transpired, it has kind of been leaving a few people, and I've noticed, in a disconnect of the sense of reality and sense of, I guess I would compare it to when you lose somebody that you love. The sense that disconnect of, is this really happening? And then that panic once it settles in. How would you say that one could deal with that circumstance? Because it's not so much of the dealing and the planning, but it's more the, wait, like, pinch me, is this really happening? And if so, like, it feels so awkward and so weird to think that this is really something that we're all living with. And, I keep on waking up each morning thinking, oh, everything's going to be better, or just wake up from a crazy dream. How do you deal with that without getting bogged down too much into, what Mecca brought up, into just all the news and all that crud?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. It definitely is surreal. I'm sure we'll look down memory lane, I guess 100 years from now, if you're alive, or our kids are alive, like they'll look down on these times, and it will be one of those, like, we lived through this. I mean, this really, I mean, so one thing just to remind ourselves, this really hasn't happened for 100 years, right? So it really is something that it's like World War. I think most of us here obviously haven't lived through world wars, but you just read it in our textbooks. So it's something like that. Like we hear it in and see it in like in the textbooks and in some documentaries, but to actually think that we are living in that war zone or pandemic, it is surreal. And I don't think it is not normal. Like it's a normal for a specific amount of time, but then it will go away and then life will hopefully resume. So this is definitely a bounded special time, if you may, right? And so maybe just like kind of taking a very zoomed out approach and like just reminding ourselves of the fact that this is happening first time in 100 years. It is not some sort of a new way of living. It is a very contained, hopefully be done with, let's say, I don't know, in a couple of months it's done, then life will resume. But in those months, how do we anchor ourselves? And I think to me, anchor word resonates. And the way I anchor myself is routine, to be honest. Like I have a very specific routine to the point of, I wake up at the same time, I sleep at the same time. When I wake up, I have this desk where I go work every morning, and then I take a jug of water with me and I take the same jug every day. So it's almost feels like a Groundhog's Day in some way, but that routine also kind of is my reality now, right? So to me, that routine it obviously helps anchoring, because otherwise it's like a dream that you're right, like we want to wake up from it but we're not able to. And then second, I think just connection, honestly, like with loved ones. And on it doesn't take that many people, right? So I'm hoping all of you at least have one loved one in your life that you're staying in touch with, deeply and intimately, because the opposite of loneliness is not togetherness. The opposite of loneliness is intimacy. And that's what we need, right? So to keep it real, for somebody to witness what we are going through, and then for us to be a witness for someone else, it just needs one person. So let's just make sure that you have one person in your life that you can kind of call every morning or every night, or what have you, um, and just making that intimate connection would be, I think, another way to make it quote unquote real. So I know Claudia had to walk away somewhere, but anyways, for others, I think this is like routine, intimate connection, and then just reminding ourselves that this is a very boxed, I guess, time that we are living in.
Sorry, my dog was.
No, I know. No worries. But hopefully you heard that and made sense to you.
Yes, and I'm very thankful for that, because that's where I'm particularly finding myself. I tend to be, a middle of introvert and extrovert. So for me, this time is not really any different. And I work from home. I spend a lot of time at home, and so when I do step into those spaces, like when I walk outside and I see it, it just hits me, and I'm having a hard time transitioning. So I really appreciate what you shared.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for asking. All right. Any other questions? Or any even just thoughts? It doesn't have to be a question. If you want to share something, please do feel free to share with this group here. No one. I can call on people. Nirali, you want to share anything? I know you're sitting in Canada, so.
Yeah, so that's sharing is like, that's my new resolution from the situation, that if you want to do something, do it immediately. Don't wait for right time to come in, right? Because this is the situation, like sitting at, it's very difficult for me, especially because working from home, it's not kind of me. I need to talk to a lot of people, and I need that office environment to work and all those stuff. But yeah, so that's like my first resolution. The first thing comes into the mind is like, yeah, if you want to do something, do it right away. Don't wait for the right time that I can do it tomorrow. No, do it today. Because this kind of things, like it's now we have to be. I'm hearing these days this new kind of phrase that this is the new situation that we have to adjust like for a longer time or longer period. So yeah, that's the thing that yeah, probably it could happen that after 2 or 3 years maybe we have another thing and we have to be in kind of not really, but yeah, it could be. So I'm not being negative. So that's like kind of stress, but yeah. So that's the thing that yeah, do whatever you want to do it right away and don't wait for the wrong time.
Thank you for saying that. The thought as you were saying occurred to me is human beings are very creative beings. I mean, we have been on this planet for whatever years, thousands of years now, and we are actually a very adaptable species. And obviously Charles Darwin theory says survival of fittest. Actually, it's survival of the most adaptable. So we are an adaptable, creative species, and we will adapt actually very fast to new circumstances. So just take, I guess, heart in the fact that we have this again coded in our DNA, survival and creative adaptation. Any other thoughts from anyone else? Lynn, Vinod, Angela, anything? Priyam?
I guess one thing that I want to share is that you mentioned something about acceptance. That's something that I deal with every day, and I'm finding it hard. Like there are moments when I feel like I'm there. I can accept that things are hard, and there are moments when I'm like, okay, I don't know how to accept this.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Acceptance, as it sounds, it's easier said than done. It's actually one of the hardest things for us to do because again we are creative beings. We love problem solving. So when something comes our way, we look at it as a problem and we want to solve it. And to solve it means in some ways you're not accepting it and you want it to go away, and you find creative ways for it to go away. Even if it will go away, and even if you find a solution for it to go away, before that there's always this moment of acceptance that it is here and that's okay, right? And my teacher says this, and I love this phrase. She says, this too, like TOO, this too, right? So whatever we are feeling, whatever is happening, it's like as if you have a bag, and just say, okay, this too, this too, this too, this belongs, it's okay. And to me, that's what I keep telling myself, this is hard, it's okay, and this belongs, this belongs, this belongs. Nothing, everything that is here belongs here. I mean, where else will it go? So I don't know. So just thank you for sharing that.
I have something that maybe I just share some of the thought is like everyone else, right? It is Link, and definitely like I'm in the roller coaster, just like you guys. Some days it's just harder to just like, wow, this is the new normal, and sometimes our mind just kind of fantasize and wonder like, what else could it be, right? But I think one key important that I find is always find that positivity or look for the beauty in anything or in any situation or any thought that pop up in your mind. So an example of it is like, I was just chatting with my team and then asking how everyone is doing. And among all of these, like one of the guys that was like quietest in the team that never talk, and he say like, oh, I actually have more time like with the family. Like my son was saying like, Daddy, I really like this because like I never spend as much time, or I never like have as much time with you as like in the past like few weeks. And that hit home for him, right?
Yes.
So I think in any situation, like you can spin it in either direction,
Yes.
like dwelling in the negativity, or rewrite that sentence in a positivity way. And I sometimes find that it's hard. But if you try to rewrite in the positivity way, no matter, and just be aware when your body is actually resisting to doing that, can also help.
Yes, thank you, Lynn, for saying that. Again, it's where attention goes, energy flows. So what are we paying attention to? All the things that are wrong, or all the things that are right? Both are here, right? And I think what is very important to remember is, just because we are focusing on the one, the other one doesn't go away. So it's not some sort of a manipulation of reality where we are only like some people say, oh, like you are being disillusioned by only focusing on the good things, because the bad is also here. And we're not really annihilating anything. It's just make sure that you're focusing, you're able to pay attention to both, right? So what is wrong, again, our DNA is coded to pay attention to that very fast, and with a lot of intensity and attention and focus. So sometimes we have to consciously, intentionally actually do the work to pay attention to what is here and right and joyful and beautiful. So thank you on that note. I think we have a couple of minutes, so maybe let's do some meditation, and we'll end on that. If you guys can all, maybe hopefully you're sitting in a comfortable position, and this is one thing I really love. It works for me, so I'm just sharing. So if you can hold your hands like this, right? So it's like both the fingers are like clawed, and then it's like a chain. And to me, we generally hold our hands like this, right? Whenever we're sitting, we never do this. And to me, this is almost symbolic to us holding our own hands, right? So it's like it's a way for me to show up for myself. So when I say to myself, I'm here for you, I hold my hands like this, and I kind of love the sensation that it kind of generates in my body. So just sharing that if it works for you. So, you can just hold your hands like that. Just relax just relax your body, your muscles. Feel the weight of your body on the chair or wherever you're sitting. And just take a deep breath in and exhale. Take another deep breath in. Exhale out. We'll do a quick body scan. So start paying attention to the top of your head, your eyes, your ears, your lips, your neck, your shoulders. Let go of any tension or any muscle stress. Going down to your chest, your tummy, your back, letting go of any tension you're holding. Your arms, your palm, your hips, thighs, shins, your feet, your toes. Take a deep breath in. Exhale all your worries. This moment right here is all we need and is all we have. Slowly open your eyes. Hopefully that was useful and you guys feel relaxed. One thing I want to show is this is an old, like a yoga technique, which I love, which is again another way for us to be here for ourselves, is to listen to us, right? So I'll just show you how it is done. And then, because once you do it, you can't hear me. So what you do is you take your hands and you put your thumb in your ear so you actually can't hear. Then you take your these fingers, close your eyes, and put the one index finger here. So basically, you're closing your ears, closing your eyes, and here. And once we do this, what we do is we hum. So what happens is you hear your own sound and you can't hear anything else outside. So let's just do that once so you can, experience it, and then you can maybe do it on your own. Take a deep breath in. And this is again another wonderful technique to get in touch with ourselves and hear ourselves, our own inner universal sound of And the last one I'll leave you with is just rubbing our hands to generate some warmth, and just patting ourselves, like our body touching is a huge part of keeping and being there for ourselves. So just touching your body and patting you throughout, like in front and back and everywhere, and your head. And that's how we'll close. So thank you everyone for being here. This was wonderful. Virtual hug to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepti.
It was great. Angela, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deepti. That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye. I'll see you next week.
Are we having?
Yes, yeah, I'll do on. So I'm thinking of doing the same time this next week, maybe a different topic. So if you guys want to send me any topic that is top of your mind, we can talk about that next time. I would love.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Bye.
Deepti. Bye.
Bye.
Guys, bye.